Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Rangers Review pre-match briefing at Ibrox ahead of today's game against Hearts. Myself and Chris Jack in position for today's league game after the trip to Prague in midweek for Rangers. They have a 3 o'clock game on a Sunday. We're going to speak through the team. Chris, I'll take up straight away. A few interesting additions, I guess more so on the bench than in the starting 11. Rangers lineup, if you haven't seen the lineup, Butland, Tavernier, Bolton, Davies, Ridvan, Lundstrom and Raskin in the middle. I presume if it's a similar setup to what it was last week, it will be Lammers and Dessers as a front two with Todd Campbell in a kind of a bit of a free position from the right. Tavernier pushing up to form width on that side, and Sima, who's been so impressive recently, reinstated after his pretty heroic shift, I think, in midweek, playing at left wing back. The interesting thing, Chris, is that, and we'll come to this, won't start with it, Cifuentes and Dowell back on the bench, which immediately gives you a little bit more options than there was in midweek. Only one change from midweek, a similar setup, we presume, to last weekend against Hibs. I mean, what stands out to you in that team, I guess, kind of as expected?
I think it's as expected, and I think again it's the manager picking the team that's most likely to get through 90 minutes. He's been big on players that are fit to play 90 minutes, and asked about Danilo the other day there. As much as we all want to see him start, and I'd like to see him get the nod, I think the fact that he's not, once again, it just shows you where he is in terms of his fitness. And all the comments and the debate will start over Dessers, whether he deserves to keep his place, whether Lammers deserves to keep his place. But I think when you see the bench and the more established players coming back in, they're not quite ready yet. This is the squad that the manager has stuck with in the last couple of games. I don't think it's a massive surprise to see this team being back to go and do a job against Hearts this afternoon.
The inclusion of Davies, I think, is interesting because obviously he didn't start in the manager's first game. Ridvan as well. It's quite different, I guess, the one area of the team that's quite different compared to last week, in the sense that you've not got a right footer there in Suter next to Goldson and Barisic. We know he's a different type of player to Ridvan. He isn't on the bench, hasn't recovered, obviously, from his injury in time. But let's start with the top end of the pitch. I thought, Dessers and Lammers took a step in the right direction last week. After that, they probably took a step backwards. I think when Dessers has not looked good for Rangers, and that has been quite often. We can't ignore that. Last week so far as an outlier, but it was a return to the game where he's playing up front, he's isolated on his own. And I thought when he came into the club, he'd be the type of player that could get you up the pitch, but he's not done that so far. He doesn't seem like that type of player. And then it isolates his pace in behind, which I think is where he looks at his worst. It's where he gets caught offside. The difference, I thought, last week against Hibs was people were playing closer to him. Rangers had more territory, so his run for the third and the fourth goal, instead of him having to run 30, 40 yards and make that move, which he just doesn't look good in, he was able to show a little bit more movement. Lammers still looks like a player who's playing without any confidence to me at all, but I guess Clement will hope their performance is closer to last week than it was in midweek, fair to say.
Two very different types of games. Having a game against Hibs at Ibrox and then a tricky European tie away in Prague. It was almost more likely that Rangers were going to have more of the ball last weekend, obviously, that they'd be more on the front foot. And I think that then also lends itself more to players being able to get up and support Dessers. It was a very different type of game on Thursday night. Obviously, the performance, as we've spoken about, was not good in that first half at all, and the team did look better second half. When Villa came on, there's a bit more about it. Crucially, there were more players in that final third because the whole team was better, not just a case of it was like the striker, the number 9, playing better. I think if they can get more players round about Dessers, and that's something that will come as the squad improves. You've still got I think Matondo to come back. Hopefully Tom wants to come back soon as well. There are players who can get closer to the striker, and that's obviously before we even start talking about Danilo and him potentially coming in. So it's a big afternoon for Lammers. We need to see more from him. I thought Dessers came on more than he did in Lammers last weekend. Took his goal really well. Lammers, of course, had that chance on Thursday night, and he could easily have been the hero. And I think we're just waiting. We've been saying this all season. We're waiting for this one afternoon, but it clicks for them. We thought that might be last weekend for Dessers. I wouldn't really hold Thursday night against them too much, as long as it's a kick on from.
It's important he kicks on today.
From last weekend. If last weekend becomes something that is just a complete outlier, then we can get back to writing them off again. If the Hibs game and the Hearts game are tied in together, and there's aspects of the performance that look like he's kind of getting there, you can almost forgive him that really tricky night on Thursday. If this is more of the same as what we've seen overall, then I think that clamour for Danilo, no matter how fit he is, the clamour for Danilo to start games sooner or later really can start coming from the fans.
Yeah, but I get a lot of comments coming in about why Danilo's not playing, but as you kind of explained, I think not only does Clement not want to rush him back, I think he actually said a number of weeks maybe until he's fully fit to play 90 minutes, but it's clear that fitness, his comments, I think in the first week he came into the job, he's spoken about how he's going to approach training differently and have a more specific, I guess, person-on-person focus for fitness. So it's clearly something that he's putting a lot of thought into, and he said this with Ruth, which is another topic, but he's in effect said it's not about rushing them back for games, it's about trying to look at the long term, and I'm sure that'll extend to someone like Danilo as well. Positive is he's there to come off the bench as he did pretty effectively in midweek. Abdallah Sima, what a shift he put in midweek. Really selfless performance for him at left wing back. He's been Rangers' most dangerous attacker though, and it's important that he's reinstated at the top end of the pitch today. And I think he's so important in a game like this because not only is he a goal threat and he gives you a bit of width from the left, which this team doesn't have lots of natural width in it, but if Hearts do choose to come out, if they do choose to come up the pitch, he's such a threat in behind, and hopefully another big afternoon for him after last week.
He's certainly a man that's in form, and if you're going to pick a first goal scorer, it's not quite buying money, but he's certainly one who's going to give you a good run for your money.
Yeah.
Because in that forward line, we'd like to see Jesus get another one. Hopefully Cantwell can start getting back in about the goals again. Lammers, not convinced he's got that many in him, but Seema is certainly someone who's striker that's speaking for itself. And I thought that was a really mature performance from him. Still, someone who's still a fairly young player. He's not played lots and lots of first team football in his career. Very highly rated. Clearly got something about him, but he doesn't have a lot of first team experience under his belt. It's a really mature performance from him. Has to do a difficult job on Thursday night. He's back in a more familiar area of the team. I say if Rangers are going to get a couple of goals this afternoon, you wouldn't bet against Seema getting himself one of them.
Last thing before we talk about the bench, the midfield, Raskin and Lundstrom have quickly formed, I guess, a bit of a partnership, and they're under the new manager. Often it's been Lundstrom who's slightly deeper with Raskin towards the left-hand side of the midfield too. I guess it's interesting to see how Hearts approach this game because Hibs, they obviously get a point yesterday against Celtic, but they had a bad day here at Ibrox last week, and I think their approach kind of played into Rangers' hands. I know you've got the Hearts team there in front of you, which you can maybe read out to us, but I think Lundstrom suits a game where there's a bit more space, and Rangers were, I think, quite pragmatic when they got the ball forward last week. They went long quite a lot in the first half. I think their passing accuracy went up about 15% after the break. So we'll get into that. Why don't we just the Hearts team and then we'll get into the midfield?
Hearts today are Clark, Kane, Baningime, Grant, Newhoff, Shankland, Rowles, Cochrane, Sibic, Othaya and Vargas. Also Alec Lowry, can't play against Rangers. Boyce on the bench, Forrest on the bench, Devlin on the bench, Andy Hardy on the bench. So an interesting side from if it's Stephen A. Smith. Yeah,
Baningime is I think he's still kind of working his way back to full fitness after almost 2 years out. But I remember when he came to Scotland how big an impact he made. But I think a lot depends in this game. Hibs came out, that set the tempo of the game. The challenge for Rangers today and the challenge for that midfield for me, Chris, is if Hearts are a little bit more conservative and look, they don't come into the game in a good way about themselves at all, how do Rangers set the tempo? Because last week with a new manager, with Hibs kind of coming out with there being space, an early-ish goal, that kind of took care of itself. It might be slightly different today where Rangers need to be a little bit more patient and they need to kind of, I guess, build that tempo on the ball, which they haven't been brilliant at in about 3 years.
I think it does ask different questions of Rangers now. We've seen how they've handled a European game away from home. We've seen how they've handled a domestic game where the opposition come at them. I've been interested to see if Hearts do sit in just to see what the manager has been able to work on, because we know how difficult it is and how important it is for Rangers to be able to break down teams at home that are coming and they're sitting in, they're camping in, they're making life difficult, try to frustrate this crowd, try to frustrate the team. It's a very different challenge having that type of game than it is, as you say, against Hibs last weekend when they came out and they're a bit more expansive. And the manager has had a bit of time now to hopefully work on a system to try and combat that, to try and get the best out of the team in these situations. So it might not make for the most entertaining 90 minutes. But I think we would actually learn a bit more about the manager on this side if Hearts did approach that. If they come in and play like Hibs, Rangers go and win 3-4-0, fingers crossed. Perhaps we don't learn that much about the manager's style in terms of combating the other side of it. So fingers crossed. I think it's one where obviously after events yesterday, it's a huge game.
You can't ignore that.
It just has to be one. It's one of these games. If it takes 1-0 and it comes off somebody's backside with 5 minutes to go, it doesn't really make any difference. It's just getting 3 points, but there's still going to be a lot that can actually take from the performance as well.
Yeah, and I guess just finally as we close, if you've not seen the benches, Robin McCrory, John Suter, Ryan Jack, Jose Cifuentes and Kieran Dowell, the two, I guess, notable inclusions in there. Scott Wright, Adam Devine, Ross McCausland and Danilo, so a little bit of a stronger bench compared to midweek. Chris, just finally, good to see both of those players back. Dowell has been out for a while and kind of became a bit of a forgotten man. Cifuentes, I think he took a knock on international break. It adds a little bit more depth to, especially I guess, that midfield pairing, because you'd imagine that's where those two players play. And that is an area of the pitch where Rangers have not had much depth in the last couple of weeks. So good to see them back, and adds a bit more strength and depth, doesn't it?
Definitely, especially considering the schedule that's coming up. A game this afternoon, another midweek game, big game next weekend as well, and now into this cycle of 3 game weeks. The games are going to really come thick and fast for the manager, and he needs players that can be robust enough to get through it. It's a lot to ask of asking Lundstrom to go and play every single minute of these fixtures. Also, Ryan Jack's come back in the squad recently as well, so having the more options in the middle of the park, the better. We don't really want to have to see Todd Cantwell drop in and take up one of those 2 roles. We want him further up the park, want him in the attacking line. So the more options we've got for those 2 slots, the better. So good to see both Bill and Cifuentes back. Fingers crossed, if all's going well, we can get them 15-20 minutes, maybe get to the low 20, 25, depending how the afternoon goes. So, fingers crossed, lots to chew over coming the end of 90 minutes, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely, as ever. Well, stick with us, folks. You can follow everything that's going on at Ibrox on our social channels. We'll have Chris's piece from the game at full time. Lots of content to come tomorrow. We'll be live a little bit after the press conference, which you can watch on the Rangers Review as well. So all the content you could desire. Enjoy the game if you're watching it at Ibrox or elsewhere, and we'll speak to you after.